Welcome to this week's Tidal Flooding Talk. Nice to be with you. Our main host, Joe Martucci, a little under the weather. I think it's the first time, Palma, that he's been, we have missed an occasional episode, but he's the rock. He's the one who's always here. So we'll do our best, my co-host, Palma Shiles, and myself, to bring you through this week's edition of Tidal Flooding Talk, a little conversational episode with Palma and myself. How you doing in this start of meteorological summer? We're into the month of June already.
I'm trying to get used to the weather. Every morning I'm like, should I put on boots? Should I put on sandals? I don't know. Because, it's still like in the 50s in the morning, but then you see it's going to be close to 80 in the afternoon. So I'm in that like awkward outfit time of the season. And
Yeah, we're going to get
shout
those.
out to,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say shout out to Joe because the last time he was sick, he was still here and he had a fever.
Yeah, it's absolutely a well-deserved day. He's a guy who doesn't like to take sick days and would be here if he absolutely could. So if he's not here, he's really under the weather.
I agree.
And so yeah, we'll just have a little conversation this week. We're into hurricane season now, with June 1st to November 30th, supposed to be a below average season. That's good. Nothing brewing out there right now. And you kind of mentioned the up and down temperatures at the shore. One day it's 80s, the next day it's 50s. It all depends on what the way that wind is blowing. We do have to get those ocean temperatures up. They've been pretty chilly so far this spring. So once we can get those ocean temperatures up, that shore to mainland difference won't be as dramatic as it's been.
So, Dan, I think I'll start with, you're a seasoned meteorologist and you've done a lot of your career here at the Jersey Shore. So, what makes weather forecasting so unique here at the Jersey Shore?
Unique is a great word, challenging because of that uniqueness. And it's ultimately, it's a flat piece of land. Like there's no mountains and valleys in southern New Jersey. It's flat. You have the ocean, you have the Delaware Bay. Therein lies part of the problem because you have breezes coming off Delaware Bay, meeting breezes coming in off the Atlantic Ocean. Sometimes you have weather that can be just shore and mainland different. Sometimes different shore towns can be different than other shore towns. Like the Cape May beaches are warm, the Atlantic County beaches are cold. It's amazing the variety you have without the elevation change and without all the topography you have in other parts of the country. It's a small corner of the world that I think Joe would agree, and any meteorologist that forecasts South Jersey, it's unique, it's challenging, and we love seeing what Mother Nature throws at us. And it also humbles us too. When we mess up the forecast, we're always learning. Our education never stops because South Jersey weather's always teaching us something.
And I remember on one of our first Tidal Flooding Talk episodes, we had meteorologist Jim Everwine on, and he said that here in South Jersey, flooding is a year-round threat. Tidal flooding happens all the seasons. So could you tell us more about like why flooding can happen on a perfectly sunny day?
Yeah, and locals know that, right? You live down the shore, it's a year-round threat. And it's those sunny, warm, 90-degree days in the summertime where tidal flooding is the farthest thing from your mind, especially if you're a vacationer. You're saying, okay, streets are going to be dry, I'm going to walk to the beach, and then you're kind of walking around flooded areas on a sunny day. And, yes, rain can exacerbate flooding. And if you have obviously a nor'easter, a hurricane, or tropical storm, that's absolutely going to bring tidal flooding. But no, flooding is a year-round threat, like you said. Even on a sunny day, even when high pressure is in firm control of our weather, even if it's 95 degrees, but it's a function of the tides. So if we're at a full moon or new moon and the tides are astronomically high, you don't need much to bring flooding into the Jersey Shore. And then wind. So if you have a full moon and that perfect northeast wind that pushes all the water into the back bays and keeps it there, locks it in during high tide, that comes up through the drains, and voila, you have sunny day flooding. And it's the strangest thing, right? When you see it, because it's kind of counterintuitive. How could it be flooding on a sunny day? But it's one of those unique things. Let's go back to that word unique that makes the Jersey Shore what it is weather-wise. So sunny day flooding. And it's something that happens, you know, repeatedly throughout the year sometimes. And I guess, Palma, on that note, with tidal flooding, in your line of work, what are some of the common misconceptions people have, about flood zones? Like if they are or aren't in a flood zone, and some of the misconceptions that go along with that.
Yeah, flood zones, I think a big misconception would be if you're not in a flood zone, you're not going to flood. But realistically, those flood zones, they're just lines on a map, right? But if it's going to flood and there's a major flooding event, I don't think the tidal floodwaters are going to say, "Whoa, wait a second. There's the line I can't cross. Not a flood zone over there." So I think people should, keep that in mind too. It's always better safe than sorry to get flood insurance even if you're not in a flood zone because there's always that risk.
And weather forecasting isn't perfect, so, I mean, you can sometimes, be in a flood zone or just outside a flood zone, but the forecast turns out to be the flooding turns out to be worse than forecast, and, that flooding exceeds expectations, and then bam, you're not in a flood zone, but you are flooding, and absolutely. So homeowners, like, especially along the shore, they're improving their properties, they're starting a project, they're playing defense, they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. What should they do before, undertaking some of these projects?
So I think there's a few things that homeowners should do right away, and that could be to contact your local municipality, the construction office, zoning, kind of get an understanding of what they're going to expect. And also check out their website because a lot of times municipalities will have a lot of information right on their website. And then also lean on your design professionals. Architects, engineers, they are typically very well versed in what the rules are and how the process goes. And lastly, I would say do your homework before you hire a contractor. There's ways you can do your research, check to see if they're licensed. You can call the DCA or the Division of Consumer Affairs and find out if there's any complaints against that contractor. And just don't pay them any lump sums of cash up front or anything like that. Always have a written contract, and pay attention to red flags because in the construction office, we might see or hear all of these horror stories about a particular contractor, but we can never say how we feel about a contractor because that would be unethical for good
Right.
reasons. Like we shouldn't have that ability. But that's why it's so important for the homeowner to do their own research.
And I guess, we're in summer season, busiest season, hands down at the Jersey Shore. Is summer the busiest season for home improvements and projects, or is that more done in the shoulder seasons, before and after the peak summer season? So, I guess,
Yeah,
what's
I
your
would
busiest time
say
of year?
so right now is extremely busy with people finishing projects before the summer and then also starting new construction and demolitions because a lot of the shore towns have moratoriums for demolitions. So in Margate it's June 15th. So everyone's hurrying up to get those places knocked down and that's where we are. So
Okay.
yeah,
And I
very
guess,
busy right now and then it'll get busy in the fall too. So
okay. It's your busiest time of year, but is summer your favorite season? I think a lot of people, summer's probably the number one answer, but at the Jersey Shore, what is your favorite time of the year? Work aside, what's your best time of the year to be, you know, enjoying everything the Jersey Shore has to offer?
yeah, I mean, I think that there are benefits all year round, different ones, of course, but I would say I really do like spring and fall. I do like summer as well, but sometimes it's just too much.
You
How
like
about
you at
you,
least
Dan? What do you think?
You strangely left winter out of the conversation. That was the only season you did not mention, and probably for good reason, and I think most people probably aren't a fan of winter. I loved winter at the Jersey Shore. I like the quietness and just the beach in the wintertime. I find mystical, the fog, and sometimes you got ice and slush and the snow at the shore, So it's not my favorite season, but I think winter does have its merits as well. But I think most people probably would do exactly what you said. it's year round, but I'm going to focus on spring, summer, and fall. My favorite's fall. I love, like, the months of October and November at the shore. The water is still fairly warm. The beaches are emptier. The fall crispness is in the air. So October and November were always my wheelhouse months to enjoy.
I agree. I love, hoodie season, sweaters, boots. I like that. So,
All right. Well, we're going to take a break. Palma, Shiles, myself will be back with part two. We're only doing two parts today. Quick break, and we'll be back to continue our conversation and wrap things up here on this week's Tidal Flooding Talk.
Thanks to the New Jersey Coastal Coalition, your flood insurance bills are lower and your streets safer from the reality of flooding. Since beginning in 2013, we build more resilient shoreline communities. Our member towns develop and share in best practices that anticipate future concerns and create flooding solutions. From our town-specific free web app for flooding information to our weekly Tidal Flooding Talk show, we focus on flooding 24/7. Visit www.njcoastalcoalition.com for more.
hello and welcome back. You are watching Tidal Flooding Talk. We are brought to you by the New Jersey Coastal Coalition, and we would like to remind our viewers that floods happen all over. Think you're not at risk? Floods happen in every U.S. state and not just in high-risk zones. Even a few inches of water can cause thousands of dollars in damage. Check your flood risk at FEMA.gov and stay informed.
And good advice. You're back on this week's Tidal Flooding Talk with my co-host Palma Shiles and myself. And Palma, I always say I'm a meteorologist, and I always say weather affects everything we do. What we're going to wear, what we're going to do today, and in my small world, I think there's some merit to that. And I wanted to ask you: does weather influence property decisions? Is it something that goes into what you do and what people do to try to improve their homes?
Yes, I think it absolutely influences property decisions. And, there are a lot of ways that you can help protect your home from flooding or at least reduce some flooding, elevating your home to the proper elevations. And even like small things like deciding on your landscaping plan. The more landscaping you have, the more it can absorb rainwater. So I think there's a lot of small and bigger ways you can make good decisions about improving your property.
And in undertaking some of these improvements, no one likes regulations, and some people think, some towns, and not naming any specifically, are overregulated or just don't like dealing with them. But why do they exist, and why sometimes are there, a strict, I don't want to say a strict set, but a thorough set of regulations in flood-prone communities that we have many of up and down the Jersey Shore?
Yeah, well, I didn't really get to see the big change. Actually, I started working in the construction office right after Superstorm Sandy.
Yep.
So it was literally like, I feel like when a big change happened. So I saw it happen, but I didn't really see what it was like before that. But a lot of the times these regulations happen because it's like from lessons learned from Sandy and all the homes that were flooded, and FEMA came in and said these homes need to be built higher.
Yeah. And it's hard to believe we're already coming up on what? This is the 15th anniversary this year of Irene, which was a storm that wasn't as bad as forecast. And then next year will be the 15th anniversary of Sandy, which was every bit as bad as forecast. It's hard to believe, a decade and a half since those kind of benchmark storms struck the Jersey Shore.
To end our show tonight, Dan, I'll ask you, what is one thing meteorologists wish the public understood?
That's a good question. I always wish that people would know that we take forecasting personally, and when we are wrong, we feel it personally. So it's not like we just blow it off and on to the next one. We're very humbled by Mother Nature when she teaches us a lesson. We want to know why we got it wrong, and especially in the summertime when people are planning, graduations and weddings and beach days and family reunions and so much stuff around our forecast. And if we get it wrong and mess up someone's plan, we feel it and we feel bad, and we take a lot of pride in trying to get the forecast right. So just know that when we don't, you know, it affects us. It hurts us too. And with especially with criticism these days, it's we hear a lot of complimentary stuff, but we also take the criticism to heart as well. So meteorologists feel your pain when a forecast doesn't go the way we think it's going to go.
Well,
I
thank
guess
you, Dan.
And that's our quick show this evening. We hope Joe Martucci is back soon. We always do that one thing we can't stop talking about. I had a really good one for Joe because there's a new map I've seen all over Facebook recently, like circulating North, Central, South Jersey, and and it had just a shore category this time too. So it had North, Central, South Shore. I wanted his take on that, but I'll save that for when he is back with us in the coming weeks. And we definitely, speaking of forecasting, forecast him a speedy recovery and hope he's back with us soon.
Thanks for joining us. Good night, everyone.